everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Huck. Today we are doing my last book haul of 2022. I will probably get a couple more books at the end of December around Hanukkah, but those will just roll over into the next haul in 2023. For now, I need to finally haul these books. I have not done a book haul since September, I think. So I've just been like collecting and hoarding these books, and now I have like 20 books to haul, which for me is quite a few books. I usually do smaller book hauls, but I've just been hoarding these away and now I have too many to go through. So I'm probably gonna go through these pretty quickly and not get too in-depth with synopses, partially just because there's a lot of them, and a lot of them I probably won't remember what they are about. A lot of times, you know, I read the description, it sounds interesting, sounds like something I want to read, and then I kind of forget what the description is so that I can go into the book without too much expectation. Anyways, let's just get started. So, a couple categories. We're gonna start out with graphic novels because I bought a couple of graphic novels. So the first four you may have seen in a reading vlog that I did a couple months ago, because I did a graphic novel reading vlog where I read Mooncakes, which is about some old friends reconnecting as they hunt some magical, nefarious things in the woods. I also read Blackwater, which also has things in the woods that they are following, but it is about these two boys in high school who have a romance, and then there's also some werewolf stuff going on in the woods. There is Check Please, which is about a freshman in college who loves to bake and is also joining the college hockey team and is kind of apprehensive about it, but quickly wins over the team with his, I don't know, with his personality and how much they enjoy him. And then there is The Girl from the Sea, which is about a girl from a small town who is kind of just waiting to graduate high school to really start her life, and that plan is thrown into upheaval when a mysterious and magical girl shows up from the sea. The other two graphic novels that I have are Crumbs, which I have actually already read, and this will be in my December wrap-up. But this has baking magic, romance, and it's about figuring out what you want to do with your life, I guess. And then the last one is actually the only graphic novel from this stack that I haven't read, which is Squire, and I actually really don't know anything about this. It just looks like it is medieval fantasy in graphic novel form. So those are the graphic novels. Now let's get into the recent releases. Most of these are ones that came out in the last couple of months, but there might be a couple that came out earlier this year, but they're all 2022 releases. So in no particular order, first up we have River of Silver by S.A. Chakraborty. This is the companion short story collection that goes with the Daevabad trilogy, which fleshes out backstory for different characters and events in the series. And I have already read and enjoyed this. Next up is Unraveler by Frances Harding. This is such a beautiful book. I just couldn't resist it. I actually don't really know what this is about. I believe that it is set in a world where people are able to curse each other, but it is very difficult to undo curses. But there is one person who is an unraveler who is able to unravel those curses, and I believe that is who we are following. That's about all I know about this, but I've been meaning to read something from Frances Harding for a while. I know that Kara really loves this author, and I've just been wanting to try it. And then when I saw this beautiful cover, I just couldn't resist. This is the UK edition that I got from Blackwell's, if anyone is interested in this particular edition. Then we have Grey Warren by Maggie Stiefvater. This is the third and final book in the Dreamer trilogy, which is the spin-off series from the Raven Cycle, and this one is focused more on the Lynch brothers. I read this in November, so I will link my November wrap-up in the description. Next is Tread of Angels by Rebecca Roanhorse. This is a novella that takes place in a world where there are angels. We're following two sisters. One of them, I think, is accused of murdering an important person, maybe one of the angels, and so then the other sister is the character we are following as she goes on a quest to prove her sister's innocence, and I think she has her ex-lover with her along the way, so I don't know if that means that they will rekindle their romance or not. I really love Rebecca Roanhorse and I'm excited to have something else from her to read. The only thing that I am not sure about is just that this is about angels, and like angels or angels and demons are often a trope that I don't really enjoy in books, but for Rebecca Roanhorse, I'm willing to give it a try. Then I have Year of the Reaper by Maquille Lucier. I honestly don't remember what this is about at all. I just know that when I read the description, it sounded interesting, and it was blurbed by Juliet Marillier. She said, a beautifully crafted novel containing everything I love in an epic fantasy, complex characters and relationships, excellent world building, and a compelling story full of twists and turns. The central characters with their strengths and flaws feel entirely real. Which sounds incredible to me, and I actually don't often see books blurbed by Juliet Marillier, so I'm very curious to see what I think of this. Like, I remember thinking that the description sounded interesting on its own, but of course a blurb from Juliet Marillier kind of like makes me even more intrigued. And then the last one in this category, I'm stacking books on my lap and it's getting precarious, so I'm a little concerned. But the last book that is a 2022 release that I have is Children of Gods and Fighting Men by Shauna Lawless. This I'm so excited about. I only heard about this like a month ago. I heard about it and immediately ordered it because it just sounds so up my alley. It is historical fantasy set in Ireland in 981 AD. It has fair folk and different battling immortals. So there is history and folklore and magic. And I think our main character in this is a healer. It just sounds like exactly the kind of thing that I love. I really hope that I will love this. It's one of those books where I'm like, it has all of the ingredients of things that I would love. Really will come down to the execution of it, which I can be a little bit picky about execution of both storytelling and writing and things like that. So I just really hope that I enjoy this because it just sounds so perfectly like something that I would love. Okay, so those are all of the 2022 releases that I bought recently. Now we'll get into some other books that I got that are maybe a little bit older. Okay, so those are securely somewhere else now. Now, the other books that I got that are more backlist. First up, I have Boudica, Dreaming the Bull. This is the second book in the Boudica series. So this is historical fiction about Boudica, who was a warrior queen among the Iron Age Celts. I read the first book this year, which was Dreaming the Eagle, and I really enjoyed it and definitely want to continue on with the series, so picked up the second book. Then I also picked up The Willful Princess and the Piebald Prince by Robin Hobb. This is a novella set in the realm of the Elderlings, which I am almost done with the realm of the Elderlings. I am reading Assassin's Fate right now, which is the final book in the series. So I also wanted to pick up this novella that is set in the same world. I believe this actually should have been read between Live Ships and Tawny Man, I think, is what I've heard, but I'm gonna read it at the end of Realm of the Elderlings. But once I read this, I will like truly be done with everything set in the Realm of the Elderlings. I also picked up The Clan of the Cave Bear by Jean M. Auel, which is a historical fiction, historical fantasy. I'm not exactly sure actually if there's fantasy in it. This is just one that I have really been meaning to read for a really long time, and so I'm glad to finally have it. I, again, don't remember too much about this. I just know it's one that's been on my TBR for a very long time, so I decided to finally pick it up. I think, does it take place in like the Stone Age or something? Or maybe I'm wrong. It's not, it's not like a medieval fantasy. It's like earlier than that, but I don't remember exactly what time period this takes place in. But been meaning to read it for a long time. So excited to have it. And then I have a couple books that I'm like, was this a bad choice that I got these? Was this a good choice or a bad choice? Because I got a couple books that are Arthurian legend related, and if you've seen some of my other videos where I've talked about this, Arthurian retellings can be very hit or miss for me, and so it's really difficult to know if this was a good or bad choice. And what I usually enjoy most in an Arthurian retelling is, one, I love the vibes, but I like stories specifically that are more what I call Arthurian adjacent. So books that are not directly about King Arthur, Lancelot, Guinevere, like the main story, but things that are adjacent to that. And yet, some of these retellings are very focused on like the main King Arthur story, so I'm not really sure how that's gonna go, but I wanted to give them a try. So okay, that was preamble. I'll just tell you what books I got. First up, I have The Winter King by Bernard Cornwell. This is one that I always see people talking about when they are talking about Arthurian retellings. This is one that is very well loved, well regarded. People love Bernard Cornwell as a storyteller and a writer, and so I wanted to give it a try. I'm not sure how this is gonna go for me for two reasons. One being that this is, I believe, more focused on King Arthur and his story, and so is a more like direct retelling of the Arthurian legend. But also, I have heard that this is more like war and military focused, which is not something that I'm particularly interested in historical fiction, or in fantasy really. Like war and military stuff is like, to me. But because this is one that people just speak so highly of, I wanted to give it a try and see what I think of it. The other one that I got is Lancelot by Giles Christine, and this is another one that I just hear really great things about it, especially people seem to really love the writing. But again, this is going to focus very heavily on Lancelot as a character. I think this is a more character-driven one than The Winter King, but Lancelot is not a character that I'm particularly interested in. As I said, like those three main characters are ones that I don't always like reading about, but again, because this is one that I always hear people talk about so highly, I wanted to give it a try, see how it goes. Okay, and then the third one is maybe a little bit more of an Arthurian adjacent. I'm not quite sure, but it is King's Peace by Jo Walton. So Jo Walton as an author, I have not completed a book from her before. I DNF'd a book from her a year or two ago, but it was a very different type of book. This is much more, I think, just high fantasy. And the other one that I DNF'd was the one that was about books, and it has like a copper cover, and I can't remember what it's called. But it's a different genre. So I was like, oh, I'll see what I think of this one, because it is a different genre than the one that I DNF'd. But also, the thing that really got me interested in this was I saw Chris from Chris Bookish Cauldron talking about this book, and how this was sort of Jo Walton's response to The Mists of Avalon by Marion Zimmer Bradley. So The Mists of Avalon is very well known, like Arthurian retelling, specifically about Avalon. And apparently, my understanding from what Chris said is that Jo Walton hated that book and wrote this book in response to kind of go like, this is how it's done when you write an Arthurian retelling. Which I, one, just love as a concept, that's like that's what this book is her response. But also, I have also read The Mists of Avalon, and I also hated it. So I am so curious what Jo Walton wrote as her response to that book as a fellow hater of that book. That is my main reason for wanting to read this. And that's pretty much all I know about it. Okay, so those are all of the fiction books that I got. I have 2 nonfiction. I'll just mention real quick. I bought Beating Burnout at Work: Why Teams Hold the Secret to Well-Being and Resilience by Paula Davis. I've already read this. I actually read the ebook of this, but I wanted to have my own physical copy as well. And then the last nonfiction I have is Bittersweet: How Sorrow and Longing Make Us Whole by Susan Cain. This is the same author that wrote the book Quiet, which I've also read, which I liked. Quiet, I wasn't as like in love with it as I think a lot of people have been, but I liked it. But I think that this book sounds very interesting. There was like a quiz that you could take online that was about like how much do you experience this like bittersweet feeling, I guess. And so I did the quiz, and then I had some opinions about how the quiz was constructed because I felt like they were talking about this bittersweet experience in 2 very different ways. And so then I was very like, I have to read this book to find out if they define or at least acknowledge that they're kind of talking about this experience in different ways. And that's really what motivated, like, it sounded interesting, but that is really what motivated me to read it, that I was like, I need to know if they're being like specific enough in their definitions. And that's why I'm gonna read the whole book. That is the last of the books from my book haul. I would love to know if you have read any of these, or if there are any of these that you are particularly interested in hearing my thoughts on them. But thank you all for watching, and until next time, bye! This is why I do small book hauls. Oh my god. This is too many to try and lift.